You know how at the beginning of the year, you were bright and fresh and full of big ass dreams that you were ready to accomplish? Well, it's June. How we feeling? Whether or not you're somebody who formally sets goals, or if you're someone who did set goals, but just let them slip, let them slide because of everything else going on in your life, this video is going to be for you. In this video, I am going to outline the 7 crucial steps that you need to revamp and refresh your goals, and you can start today. Welcome back to Organized Chaos. My name is Regan, and I am so very happy that you are here. Before we get started, I want everyone to take a deep breath, and we are going to wipe off the judgment, wipe off any previous conceived notions that we have about the goals that we set, what we should have accomplished, what we didn't accomplish, because you know what? We can only do the best that we can do with everything else going on in our lives. I want this to be a judgment-free zone where you can instead put on more of a curiosity hat. In this episode, we are going to go through all of the different steps that I recommend that you start taking today in order to make sure that you can actually accomplish all of those cool and amazing and incredible goals that you have up here in your brain by the end of this year. But that takes sitting there and having some deep and oftentimes hard conversations with yourself in order to be able to understand what might be stopping you, in order to understand how you can actually get from point A, where you are right now, to point B, where you want to be, and how we can continue to shrink that gap. The life that you want to live, the life that you are dreaming of, is literally right in front of you, but it's essential that you sit down and really think about how you're going to get there. Setting a goal is one thing. I want to start a new workout routine. I want to eat healthier. I want to get a promotion. I want to change jobs. Whatever that is, you're so close to getting it. We just need to make a couple little tweaks. It might seem big, it might seem lofty, it might seem confusing, it might seem blue sky scenario, but I guarantee you, if you start to break it down, once you start to unpack it with the tips and techniques that I'm going to show you in this video, it's going to be so much easier and you're not going to be as overwhelmed as you try to do it. Okay, so let's dive in really quickly and start with step number 1. In step number 1, you are going to audit your life. When I say audit your life, I mean, let's think about all of the different areas and how you're feeling about them. In a previous episode, I mentioned the wheel of life as being one of the best exercises that I've ever done in being able to understand how I can be more productive. I'll link that video in the description and then also up here if you are on YouTube. But essentially, you're going to want to break down your life into the 8 different areas that are most important to you. Those can be things like health, career, finances, family, relationships. All of those different parts end up filtering into what makes you a whole person. Our goals are really a compilation of everything that we want out of life. And your goals don't need to be focused on just one specific area. I want us to kind of step aside from the preconceived notion of what success really is, and instead take a look at what is going to make me feel good, what is going to make me excited about opening up my eyes every single morning and being here on this earth. Because we have such a short amount of time on this earth, why would you ever want to do anything except for the things that make you happy? Okay, so we're going to take all of those different areas. Let's say we're taking health, for example. Let's take a look at what's working well and what maybe isn't working as well. So maybe what's working really well in the health realm is that you're waking up at the time that you want to, you have a good sleep routine, but potentially you don't have the exercise routine that you feel like you need in order to show up as your best self. Because even if at the beginning of this video, when I said, what goals do you want to accomplish? Even if that has nothing to do with health, if you want to get a promotion, for example, if you want to take on more responsibility at work, you are still going to need to rely on all of these other facets of your life in order for everything to come together. And so think about that as you're going through these different elements of your life to see what works and what doesn't work. Let's think about how that can connect into your overall goal. If I'm sleeping terribly and my goal is to go and get a promotion, well, maybe I need to take a look at my sleep routine in order to feel better, in order to feel like I'm rested and ready to go when I go into big meetings with my boss, with my manager, with the CEO of my company, whoever you ultimately report to, in order to show up as my best self and show them everything that I have to offer. So that's what it's going to look like to audit our life. You are going to ask, what are the different areas that are most important to me? How are they doing really? And what areas could they potentially improve? I want you to align your current lifestyle with the lifestyle that you really, really want to see yourself achieve. And this is going to get us one step closer. You're also going to take a look at, in 6 months, where do I see myself? So if you're sitting there and going, in 6 months, I really want to have moved countries. In 6 months, I really want to have this new promotion. Well, great. Let's write that down. Let's think about what it would mean for us to be there. What does it look like for us to be there? What would our day-to-day look like? We just want to try and embody as much as possible what that future life could look like for us so that we know all of the different steps and the gaps that we're going to need to fill in order to get there. So now that you understand what's working in your life, maybe what's not working so well, we can start to look at how we're going to close that gap. But to do that, I want to take a look at a couple very specific examples of things that might be stopping you, unconscious things that might be stopping you from achieving these goals that maybe you're not thinking about right now, but I want us to start thinking about it so we make it easier for us to really push through. Maybe it's a limiting belief, maybe it's something in your life that's really just not serving you anymore. That's what we're going to take a look at. So step number 2 is going to be figuring out what's stopping you. A ton of different things can be stopping you from achieving your goal. A big one that I see quite often, and I definitely see this within myself, is mindset. Is your brain actually committed and excited and believe that you can achieve this thing? Your mindset is so important. You have to embrace this life that you want to be living in order for you to be able to get there. Because if your initial response is always, I'm not really sure I can get there. Now, don't get me wrong, things are very scary sometimes. Life can be open-ended and we don't know what's going to be on the other side. Our brain loves to feel safe. We love to know what to expect. And when there's an unexpected or a change that's coming up, our brain's going to try and protect us. We love a brain that protects us, but we need to say, not right now, and instead take a look at, is this the mindset that's serving us today in order to reach the goals that we want to reach? So this is a hard truth that we are going to need to embrace. Do we believe that we can get there? And you know what? If the answer is no, that is okay. But let's start to figure out whether that's through affirmations, I am statements, general journaling, conversations with yourself, conversations with your therapist, how you can change that belief system, because you can do whatever the hell you put your mind to. I believe it. You just need to jump on board and believe it too, and we're going to get you there. Number 2, is it disconnected from your why? Part of the reason why your goals might not actually be working is because they're not specific enough. If you're thinking, I want to build a fitness routine, but you don't have a real reason behind why you want to build a fitness routine, and instead it's because you see everyone on social media working out all the time, you see people at the gym, you see people walking down the street, or your friends saying that they just came from the gym, that's not necessarily going to be a motivator for you. If you don't have a true motivator that's digging deep into why you exist here in this moment in time, in this space on this planet, it's going to be so hard for you to continue to follow through and build a routine. One of my goals this year has been to understand how my cycle fits in with the rest of my life. And yes, I could sit there and go, okay, I want to start syncing my cycle to my life. But what's more powerful is I want to sync my cycle to my life so that I can better understand my body, better understand how it impacts my emotions, so that I can show up as a more compassionate human, a better partner, a better coworker, and a better future mother for my children. That statement is going to be so much more impactful. So in the moments where you're like, nah, I'm not really sure I can wake up right now and go to the gym, you can instead sit and say, you know what? No, I'm going to go to the gym because I'm concerned about my long-term health and my longevity. And it's important to me that I can be here so I can attend the big moments in my life, in my family's life, so that I can spend time with the people that I love the most doing what they love. That's going to be so much more of a motivator than just, I guess I have to force myself to go today. Another reason why you might be having a hard time getting closer to your goals is because they're too lofty. And sometimes it's hard to hear that. I am a deeply impatient person. I want things to happen right now. I don't want to wait for them. But if my goals are too lofty, it's just going to seem unattainable right now. If you're going from never ever working out to wanting to run a marathon in the next 6 months, it's potentially possible, but you're going to put a huge amount of strain on your body in order to get there. Instead, let's look at something that's a little bit more attainable. You'll make it easier for yourself to actually reach and attain the goals instead of sabotaging yourself before you even get started. Okay, that's a really good space for us to actually move on to step number 3, so we can start to figure out how we're actually going to get closer to the goals now that we've identified what might be keeping us just at arm's length, whether that's our mindset, whether it didn't connect into our why, or it's maybe a little bit too lofty. Now we're going to take that information and those changes that you've just made and apply them to create much more specific goals that you're actually going to be able to reach in the next 6 months. And that is to create SMART goals. You might have heard this in university, in high school even, or in your current job, but I've been using SMART goals for so long, and I used to only apply them to my career and not actually apply them to my day-to-day life. And I found it incredibly helpful now that I've reframed my mindset and don't see it as such an academic structure, and instead something that's going to help me really move my life along in a much simpler way than I think people typically make it out to be. All SMART really stands for is your goal needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. It goes back to that concept of if your goal is too lofty, if it's too big, if it's I want to run a marathon in the next 6 months, you're not going to know where to start. If your goal is instead, I want to run a half marathon in the next 6 months because I want to prioritize my health and wellness so that I can spend time with my family, or because I want to raise money for a specific charity, that's going to be so much better for you, your motivation. It's going to mean you're actually going to stick with it and not let it fall by the wayside like maybe you have in the last 6 months or so, or a couple years. I'm not judging. As you are making your goals smarter and making it much more specific, aligning it into your why, you are really going to want to focus in on the M, the measurable part. Because to make it measurable means that you're building yourself a structure that your brain's going to thank you for, because it'll be easier for you to start chipping away at it. Saying, I'm going to run a half marathon by the end of the year, sure, that's one thing. But saying, I am going to run 3 days a week for the first 3 weeks, 4 days a week for the following 3 weeks, 5 days a week for the following 3 weeks, and then maybe 6 days with a couple of rest days here and there. I don't know. I can't remember what it looks like to train for a half marathon, but if you start to break it down and actually have, I'm going to run this many miles on this day, it's going to be so much easier for your brain to follow. The typical structure that I like to follow when I'm trying to make something really measurable and really attainable is choose 3 big things that are going to get you closer to your goal. So if the example is you want a promotion in your career, what are 3 things that could get you closer to it? 1, maybe you need more management experience. 2, maybe you need more experience presenting. 3, maybe you need to close the skill gap in a couple of different areas. Well, great. How are you going to get to each one of those 3 things in order to achieve your overall goal? Well, let's break it down to 3 micro goals within that. So if you're going to need to practice public speaking in order to get closer to your overall goal of getting that promotion, well, maybe you need to speak at 5 different industry conferences. Okay, great. In order to speak at those 5 different industry conferences, what do you need to do every single day in order to get closer to that goal? So pretty much you're going to want to create this web. You're going to want to create this triangle where you get down to specific things that you're going to need to do on a daily basis in order to get you closer. So look at that objectively. Who are you? If you have a really, really busy work schedule and you can't commit to running 5 days a week in the last quarter of the year, let's say, in order to train for your half marathon, well, maybe a half marathon's not the goal for you by the end of this year. Maybe your goal instead should be to run a 5K. Or if you are somebody who has a really busy schedule with your friends and your family and you want to prioritize that this summer, and maybe this winter something big is happening in your family, well, maybe a promotion can come, but instead you need to be thinking about more creative ways that's actually going to fit in to your current lifestyle and match with the life that you want. So all this is really focused around how do we build the life that you want? How do we create your own puzzle? Because no one's going to look exactly like yours, because you're in your own moment, you're in your own time, and that's totally okay. You're going to get there. You're totally going to get there. But we need to make sure the goal that you choose is actually applicable to you and not over the top. It's ambitious enough where you are going to push yourself, but not so ambitious where you're just not setting yourself up for success. Which leads me on to point number 4, which is be gentle with yourself. Throughout this whole process, be gentle with yourself. Rome was not built in a day. It is going to take time in order to achieve this goal. But as long as you're chipping away at it slowly, I promise you're going to get there. As long as you're applying the SMART goal system to your goal, as long as you're trying to remove as many of those barriers, work on yourself, improve your overall life in order to help support the goal that you're trying to achieve, I promise you're going to get closer. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. And that's okay. Consistency doesn't look like showing up at 100% every single day. Consistency just looks like showing up. Now, I'm saying all of this because I also need to remember it myself. And so if you needed that reminder, I am so here to give it to you as often as you need. In order to keep showing up consistently, though, we are going to need to build a list of micro habits. To achieve any goal, it's so important to realize how habits actually work, because that's what we're doing here. We are trying to set habits so that at the end of the 6 months, we can become the person who we can see inside our eye, right? Like we can see in our mind's eye, but it might be really difficult to translate that from in our brains to our reality. Knowing how your brain works is going to help you help yourself in the long run. So if you're trying to build a workout routine, for example, you need to create cues and routines for yourself in order to support that. Maybe that looks like setting all your clothes out the night before. Make it super, super easy on yourself. Remove all of that friction in any way possible, because the more friction that exists, the harder it's going to be. The same way that if it's not connected into why you actually want to go and do something, it's going to be really hard for you to go and accomplish that one thing. You are going to want to make sure that you have a routine built to make it super, super easy for you. If you're trying to get a promotion, but you're working in the middle of a super busy coffee shop at all times and you can't actually focus in on anything, like me, I have to choose very specific days that I go to coffee shops, then you're not really helping yourself. Instead, you're taking away from your ability to take steps, even micro steps towards that goal. And then on the other side of that is the reward system. You have to be able to reward yourself. So choose little milestones that you're going to be able to reward yourself for. If you've had a great conversation, let's say with your manager, or if you've spoken at a conference, if you have hit a certain milestone goal in your running journey, if you're training for that half marathon, there are so many ways that you can go and reward yourself, whether that's with an exciting meal, something that you wanted, something that's going to help support you. So if you are training, maybe that's a new pair of running shoes when you've hit a certain goal. Whatever it is, make sure that you're also recognizing all the little micro steps that it takes and the consistency that it takes every single day in order to get there. Sometimes we get so just dialed in on what the ultimate goal is that we forget the journey, and the journey's half the fun. Which leads me to step number 6, start small. We talked about in SMART goals how they have to be really, really measurable. Well, one way that you can do that without feeling like you're so overwhelmed is getting to like, how can we make it as granular as possible? How can we make it as small as possible? The step that you need to do so we make it as easy as possible for you. So as I said, you are going to take your goal. If your goal is to run a half marathon by the end of the year, what are these 3 things? What are the 3 sub goals that you are going to need to complete in order to get there? One is obviously going to be you have to run a certain distance. The second could be you need to build routines in your life in order to support those big runs that you're going to need to go on. And maybe the third is you need to learn and close the skill gap in what the proper running techniques are. If we take a look at all that, then what are the 3 actions that you are going to need to take, whether that's every day or every week, in order to get closer to it? Are those things like you're going to need to go to bed and wake up at a certain time? You are going to need to eat healthy. Are there certain supplements? Is there a certain amount of water that you're going to need to drink? Is there certain equipment that you need? What specific questions do you need answered in order to get there? What 3 subtopics do you want to become an expert in when it comes to running? How many days a week are you going to need to run? That's what you want to do to start really, really small, because just saying I want to run a half marathon at the end of the year, that's great, that's cool, but how are we actually going to get there in a way that's not going to make you feel so overwhelmed and all over the place? And the very, very final step in order to achieve the goals that you want to achieve by the end of the year is be consistent. And consistency does not mean that you need to show up at 110% every single day. You're a human. That's just not possible. I can't do that. If you can do that, I'm very, very proud of you, but I highly, highly doubt it. Instead, consistency is just showing up every single day. My favorite stat from Atomic Habits by James Clear is if you just make a 1% change, if you get 1% better every single day, by the end of the year, you are inevitably going to get 37% better, because all of these things compound upon one another. It builds, it builds, it builds. So you don't need to start hot and heavy today. You can start super, super small. Even just sitting and thinking to yourself, what are all the different areas of my life? How do I want to see those improve? What might be affecting my mindset? Just even listening to this episode means that you're already 1% better today. So now let's take a look at what we can do in day number 2, number 3, number 4, all the way through the rest of the year, because I will check in with you all at the end of the year to see how we've done trying to get closer to these goals. Remember that you can't tackle everything today. That's why we've taken all the previous steps. That's why we've really taken a look at how are we going to build a life around my goal in order to support myself. And as long as you're showing up for yourself, that's all that really matters. Building consistency means you're going to continue to build your own confidence. Every single day might not be easy. It might be hard. You might meet some roadblocks, but by the consistency that you've built, you'll know that there are easier days to come. Thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. I'm so excited for you to reach all of your goals, and I cannot wait to check back in with you all in 6 months' time. Please, if you have a specific goal in mind, drop it in the comment section. I want to hear about it. Send me a DM, regan.olsey on TikTok or Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well if you're watching this on video. I'm Regan, and this has been another episode of Organized Chaos. I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.